Today we're going to be reviewing the rightful ruler of sinking, Rhodion's Rime Shank E.G.O. Rime Shank is an E.G.O that has a base of 15 and a positive 15 coin. It deals blunt damage and has an attack weight of 3. If your target is above 50% or HP, deal plus 30% damage, which this E.G.O is looking pretty good so far. With the extra damage, the attack weight, and the above average roll. And that's not even the most of it. On hit, you burst Tremor. On hit, you inflict 5 sinking potency. And on hit, you inflict 5 sinking count. That is a whopping 5 count and 5 potency that you're inflicting with this E.G.O. But it does get better. This E.G.O's passive is called Coldness. On hit, if your target has 5 plus sinking, inflict 1 bind and 1 attack power down 3 times per unit. This is pretty good, and it synergizes with her on-hit effects. But what isn't really good is the price you'll have to pay to use this E.G.O. 20 sanity and 5 gloom and 3 envy, which is a bit pricey for a Teth, but it's AoE and it's a very good Teth, so it is pretty justified. Well, the resistances, you'll become Fatal to Wrath, Fatal to Sloth, Ineffective to Gluttony, and all the rest are normal. Upon corroding, Rime Shank will change to a base of 21 and a coin of plus 6, which usually corrosions you don't want it to be positive, but this is a Teth, you can usually safely corrode into it without getting negative coins. Your attack weight stays the same. You still have if the enemy is above 50% HP, deal plus 30% damage. You still inflict Tremor Burst, but this is where your E.G.O starts to cooking, or as much as it can be an ice E.G.O. On hit, you inflict 10 sinking potency, and on hit, you inflict 8 sinking count. 8 sinking count. That is really good. That's like 2 away from being double the original, which is very good. It's time to get the show on the road. So, Rime Shank Rhodion's drip is relatively bad. It's the same with her base. There's not much going on until you corrode it, which corroding is always good for the drip factor, I'm going to be honest with you. If you corrode, you're most likely going to have above 2, which sadly is about as high as I can put this E.G.O. Because even if its corrosion is not terrible, I like its look, to be honest, I really do. But it's not good enough to keep it out of being just above her base E.G.O, which is what is cast. For the strength of this E.G.O, I think we can all agree that it's definitely going in like 10, 9, or 8 high 8s. And I would say I would put it at 8.5 because good AoE, good on-hit effects, and a really actually let's boost that up to a 9 because the on-hit with if your target is 50% HP or above, deal plus 30 damage. I think that pushes it to a 9. I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anybody where I put this E.G.O in usefulness, and that's being a fat old 10. Rime Shank has a pretty high roll for being an AoE. It's an AoE. Targets have 50% or more HP, deal plus 30% damage, which is really good. It inflicts a lot of sinking, which it's a pillar in sinking. Its passives are free. You use the E.G.O once, and as long as they don't destroy your sinking count, you can pretty much get infinite power downs and binds on your enemy. Which don't sound like much, but if you're running a good sinking team, or maybe you have the sink in your sinking team, you will be able to benefit off that bind. Now, the resistances being fatal to 2 things and effective to 1 thing aren't necessarily that good, and its cost is a little pricey, being 5 gloom and 3 envy, but I think it's all justified from what it can do. And what it can do is get you well off and pretty much make sure your sinking team is valid. No matter who you have, your sinking team will be fine if you bring Rime Shank Rhodion. And that's why it's a 10. Well, that's pretty much all, folks.